This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, I'm ready to go now. Sorry about that. I'm going to read our opening statement and then we can get started with the meeting. In light of the 2020 COVID-19 virus and current guidance regarding physical distancing to reduce the potential for spread, meetings of the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission and their committees have transitioned to a virtual format. Regional public bodies were granted authority to conduct these meetings electronically pursuant to provisions of Virginia Code and related legislation approved by the General Assembly of Virginia during the period of the governor's state of emergency declaration for COVID-19. While we do not know the exact duration of the current practice of electronic meetings, we will continue to function in this manner until such time as it is deemed advisable to return to in-person meetings. Staff provided notice of this meeting on our website through electronic posting and provided an agenda to members. The meeting will be recorded. Audio and visual recordings of the meeting and materials will be posted on the Plan RVA website within 48 hours of this meeting. Any member of the public participating as an observer during the meeting today may submit comments or questions at any time during the meeting via email at info@planrva.org or by using the chat functions of the meeting platform. We ask that everyone identify themselves first when speaking so that we can more accurately record the activities of the meeting. And I will just identify that those on the call include myself, Martha Heater, Diane Fusco from our staff team, Dr. Spagna, and Dr. Newbill from our commission as the two members of the nominating committee for the commission for fiscal year 21. I think that could satisfy as a roll call, unless we should. Do you think we should do an official roll call? I guess maybe we'll get you guys to identify yourselves. Dr. Spagna, do you want to signify that you're on the line?
I am here, George Spagna.
Thank you. Dr. Newbill?
Here, Cynthia Newbill.
Thank you. There are no other members that I see on the line or any other participants. So we will proceed with the meeting. The agenda is brief today. It is intended to discuss the appointment of officers for the upcoming fiscal year. And Dr. Spagna, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to share your thoughts. I know you've been giving this some consideration. And we can maybe start there with the suggestions.
Okay, thank you. My original thought was because my memory seemed to recall that we had modified the bylaws to allow the chairman to serve 2 terms. I was reminded that that's not the case. So we need to fill vacancies. What occurs to me is one way to do that at this point is for Ms. Page to move up to vice chair and leapfrog Mr. Davis from treasurer all the way to chair. And then we can find 2 new people to take the position of secretary and treasurer. That's one way to do it, working with people who are currently officers. Another possibility would be to move the treasurer and secretary up as normal and then go out and draft some distinguished statesman to be the chair and draft some equally distinguished statesman to be the secretary. So those are 2 ways I can see to proceed. I don't want to boot Ms. Page out of the rotation, but.
So can I understand who would be next in the rotation for chair? Would that be Ms. Page?
So Ashland would actually be the next locality rotating. Dr. Spagna fills the vice chair seat right now. With him leaving the board, and I believe if it's not been already officially appointed, I mean, we'll have a replacement and that person will not have been serving most recently on the commission or the executive committee.
That's correct. Council will reorganize their first meeting, I believe on the 7th of July. At that point, they will elect a mayor and vice mayor, reappoint the attorney, and then the mayor will make appointments to committees. So.
And then Mrs. Page is the next person. New Kent County is the next community after Ashland, with Mrs. Page serving. She's our, as Dr. Spagna indicated, she's our current treasurer. under normal circumstances would be in line to become the vice chair in fiscal year 21, and she has just been elected as the chair of the TPO. So I think that's one factor to consider when we think about New Kent rotation. That's a lot to ask of one person in one community to serve as chairs of both bodies, and I don't know what her desire would be. I think I have a feeling, but haven't had that conversation directly with her.
And she's the only New Kent rep that we have, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Each locality gets to pick one person to serve on the executive committee, and she's that one person for both the TPO and the PDC.
And so let me ask you the question about Ashland, which would be next in queue for chair. So you're saying the concern is we just would not have somebody. I'm just not sure why we wouldn't queue that person up.
We don't know who that might be.
Yeah.
Say again?
We don't know who that might be. That's the issue.
Right. But
I mean,
there
one
would still
possibility
be,
is that, if Steve Trevette is reelected as mayor, he might decide he wants to do it. He might, if he's elected mayor, he may decide that he wants John Hodges to do it, or he may decide he wants Kathy Abbott to do it, or he may decide that the newest person on the council who just got elected would appropriately be stepping into that position. It's not my call.
right. But I'm saying, why would we take that municipality out of the rotation? Because we don't know yet who. I mean, they're going to appoint somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the unknown. So would that somebody be willing to step in as chair, having never served on our board before? In consideration of their desires. And then to your point, should it matter, and should the locality just continue to rotate as we have?
Well, because I had that same situation. I came in, I had not been on and had not served. I mean, and I came in and that was the first thing up was chair. I mean, certainly a little more, I think I could have been more helpful with a little more runway, but hopefully didn't do too bad. But I guess the only concern I get is that we get the jurisdiction out of place in terms of the rotation. That's all. And I know that we have that rotation set.
So yeah, I mean, I think we're in an interesting situation this year because of the summertime elections, that usually we have the ability to inquire with the locality and say, do you want to waive your queue, or that's when this has happened before, the jurisdiction has been able to kind of confer with the prospective appointees, and they've made that decision and advised us and said, when Mrs. Jekyll was in this position, she just said she didn't feel comfortable assuming that, and so Chesterfield stepped away from the rotation. We reconfigured, and then they took their the leadership role just a year later. We did the similar thing with New Kent. You probably remember when we didn't have a member.
I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be an option that you guys could go, would be to simply say, let's wait until Ashland knows who's on their council, and can start to think about appointments. And then we could, I can confer with Eric to see how this could work. But I mean, we could potentially delay elections to see whether Ashland wants to be considered or not.
Okay. And so when will they decision again, Dr. Spagna?
First meeting in July 7th.
Yeah, their first meeting, you said, Dr. Spagna, is July 7th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll defer. I mean, I think that we have delineated in our, I'm not sure if it's in the bylaws, but I certainly know that we have delineated this rotation. There's an expectation, of folks queuing up and moving through the rotation each year. And I think people seem to feel pretty comfortable with that. So that would be my only concern, is going out of sync with, with that rotation. And especially since it's not a very long period before we would know what or who Ashlyn would like to do. But I'll defer to the wisdom of the two of you. You've been doing this longer than me.
I'm not sure who you're calling wise here.
Yeah. So I could explore with Eric what the kind of procedure would look like if we were to want to delay after the July 7th organizational meeting for the town, and see what his advice would be on that. If he doesn't see a problem with delaying, I mean, that might be the easiest course to do. I think Dr. Spagna, you would then be off the hook as far as continuing to serve on the nominating committee, but we could certainly, I think given the circumstances, I mean, we could work to try to make it possible for Ashlyn to serve if that's their desire.
Well, and again, that would depend entirely on who gets appointed, whether it makes sense or not. If John Hodges were appointed, he stepped in as chair of TPO at his first meeting on the TPO.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other scenario, Dr. Spagna, you said was to have Ms. Page move up to vice chair.
Right.
We would have to identify a chair. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or no, you had someone who was treasurer.
My suggestion was to leapfrog Sean Davis into that position. And one could perhaps, take the next two localities in line and then stick Ashlyn back in so they can get back into the rotation. I mean, my understanding is that the rotation is a matter of practice, not a matter of bylaws.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it was a matter of bylaws. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, the rotation is not in the bylaws. It's a practice, not a procedure. And I think our circumstances are incredibly unique this time because we have a vacating vice chair, and we already understand, I think, the situation with Ashlyn. The New Kent, which is next in rotation, is already chairing a large regional body. And so I think I think she would be a great chair. She's been an active member of the board. I think it's a question of whether she wants to chair two of these bodies. And I don't know her other commitments, otherwise as I think chair of the New Kent Board of Supervisors. And whether the rest of the board would be favorable to one person chairing both bodies. I don't have any experience with that conversation, so I can't weigh in. The next person, as Dr. Spagna indicated, is Sean Davis from Hanover. He has just assumed his role on the commission. The good side is he's been a longer serving elected official who has served on the commission previously. So this is not a completely foreign entity to him.
Okay.
And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, after Sean Davis, the next person who's not a current officer but would move into that rotation is Neil Spoonhauer from Goochland. Also newly elected official, just in taking his seat in January. And then finally, we get back around to Larry Nordvig from Powhatan. Powhatan, believe it or not, Powhatan is the community that we first encountered this issue with the rotation when David Williams was chair, I guess about 5 years ago now, was not reappointed to the board in the middle of his term, and so Floyd Miles assumed his spot to serve out, and then he served a 1.5-year term. So that's a little bit of the history, if it makes sense, kind of going down that order.
Sure. Well, if it's not codified in the bylaws, which I'm sorry, I thought it was, then I'm more open as long as Ashlyn can still queue back up for the following for that following year.
Yeah, I mean, I think my largest concern is that we have someone serving who, I'm not so naive to think that anybody desires to be the chair of the PDC, but I would like to think that someone is willing to serve. So
And
I think
you had go on, sorry.
Well, I think that's, I mean, from a staff perspective, it would be nice to have a chair who, feels like they're willing to do it.
Any conversation with Sean?
I have not
That's who.
had any conversation with anybody actually yet. Wanted to wait until
okay.
you guys had a chance to talk.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have lots
That's
of
okay.
things ringing.
Sure.
Well, I mean, again, the fact that it's not codified in the bylaws, the fact that we would still queue Ashland up for the following year, even though it's not codified, it's been our practice, so they wouldn't lose, ground or opportunity rather. I could certainly be more supportive of what you're proposing. If the two of you think, the lineup would serve our body well.
And the other issue is that there's a lot of stuff on the plate for the coming year. We're at the point where we
Yeah.
have to talk about moving the office, moving the headquarters, and how do we meet.
Exactly.
So somebody with
Yes,
some
there are lots of pieces. Yep. The Central Virginia Authority. I mean, I think there are a lot of spaces that I think probably the commission could play a role in terms of some of the regional discussions on a variety of things as well.
Yeah, I do feel like usually my pitch to a prospective chair is that we try to make it as easy as possible from a lift perspective, knowing that everyone that serves on the commission is sitting on a lot of boards.
Right.
I would agree with you that the potential this year is probably higher from a workload standpoint, and it would be good for someone who saw the opportunity in that. I mean, again, from a staff perspective, and didn't simply view the position this year as facilitating monthly meetings.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
So it may be worth
This is
having a conversation
helpful
with
for,
other people and sort of seeing what their thoughts are and their, capacity and interest might be. We could start with Ashland and kind of use that rotation as a guide and how to sequence those conversations. But
well, I mean, again, based on the discussion, I have a greater level of comfort with what's being, Dr. Spagna, what you've put forth with, like you said, Ms. Page going up to vice and our treasurer going up to chair if there's an interest. I didn't get clear on the next two positions down.
that would pull
Did
Mr.
you have
Spoonhour. Well, let me say that again. If Mr. Davis leapfrogged to chair, if I'm understanding
right?
that correctly, Mrs. Page held the vice chair position. The treasurer
Right.
would be Ashland, I would presume, and then we would slot Mr. Spoonhour from Goochland in the secretary position.
Okay. And then Ashland would be queued up for, based on practice, for the next year for chair. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that scenario would switch Ashland and Hanover. So leave New Kent in a rising position, but it would just switch the order of Ashland and Hanover. Which
I got you.
I mean, again, I don't want to speak for the town or the county, but geographically, there is some merit to that, considering the relationship between Ashland and Hanover. I don't know, Dr. Spagna, if you have a reaction to that.
Oh, I mean, right now we have good relations with the county. 16 years ago, when I first got on council, it wasn't that case, but we work well together. County's getting a new administrator, but he's somebody that we know, and I think the town manager can get along well with the new administrator at the county level. So I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. Well, then let me just say, having the discussion has been helpful to clarify for me. So certainly, I think I could certainly support what you're proposing, Dr. Spagna, in that first case scenario.
would you all like me to contact Mr. Davis and I guess maybe Josh Farrer at the town? Or how would you like to, Dr. Spagna, I want to be sensitive to your time, but also your role with the town.
Well, maybe not. Maybe it isn't Josh that you would contact, but maybe Steve Trevette, the current mayor.
Okay.
If he seeks a second term as mayor, then he's the one who would make the appointment.
Okay.
And so once you have reached out, are we going to have a follow-up conversation to get all of these finalized based on what feedback you receive, or?
Yes, I think
How
that's
do-
smart. It would be nice to have you as the committee members, I think formally have a recommendation. I think I have 3 to-dos from this conversation. One, just to inquire with Eric about timing and sequence to make sure we understand the timeline. We had a conversation at the last meeting about whether or not it would be necessary to meet in July. So I want to make sure we're clear on that. 2, I will follow up with Steve Trevette, as Dr. Spagna has suggested, to seek his counsel about Ashland and whether, I guess, in his role as mayor currently, would he be amenable to Ashland delaying their service as chair? And then I'll reach out then to Sean Davis and see if he's open to it.
Okay,
Sound right?
Dr. Spag, does that sound? And then we'll get back together while Dr. Spagna is still in seat, right? So that we can.
Yes, that would be the plan. Yeah. Thank you guys for
Okay.
meeting so quickly. That way I can do this homework and hopefully follow up as soon as next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Sounds
Yeah.
good to me. Thank you.
Thank you for doing the legwork.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Can
Take
I
care.
get with you? I want to double
you.
check how to contact him, the best way to contact him. Do you think phone or email?
Steve will respond to either.
Okay.
Probably perhaps an email to set up a phone call.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that suggestion. Great. Well, that's the only business item. I'll start making that contact today and update you as soon as I have information by email to the 2 of you, and we can shoot to set up a call, if possible, maybe next week. I can
Good.
look. I'll look for dates that work for the 2 of you. Or
Yeah,
Diane,
that would work.
maybe Diane, you could help with that.
And if we need to do it sooner, I can try to find a window as well, just to make sure we, get the task completed, then, move on to the next assignment here.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you all
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
hosting.
Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Take care.
Call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.